missions is certainly changing tremendously at this time, and just as I travel in different countries of the world, I hear of many indigenous organisations being put together to be engaged in mission in West Africa and East Africa, parts of South America, Central America, and all over Asia. Tremendous mission movements in India, reaching some of the unreached people in India and also beyond India to other parts of the world. So no longer is the profile of mission a story of the West, the domination of Europe and North America trying to reach the world with the gospel. And that was very much the agenda in 1910, 100 years ago, at the famous Edinburgh Missionary Conference, where God gathered together mission leaders from all over the world to look at the unfinished task of sharing the gospel. And that was certainly a reality at that time. There needed to be outreach that was going on. But we're now in a stage where God is actually, we're now in some ways a victim of our success. You know, we have seen the gospel move out in many different places, and now that the church has been planted over the past 100 years in places where it never existed before. And that church is now a missionary church. It's no longer a church that is just saying, we want to look after ourselves, we want to, you know, just be the people of God in this situation, but they're seeing the reality of Acts 1:8, where Jesus challenged the disciples to be his witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and right to the ends of the earth. And so it's exciting to think that these churches, these young churches, have really caught that vision and are moving forward with it. And certainly we in SIM want to encourage that to take place. We want to see that energy that is within these churches come into influence and touch SIM for our future, and to help us grow in new ways in how God wants us to work. And I think what we've got, the reality that we have today just now, is the challenge is not sort of reaching, say, the countries that were unreached in the past as they looked at the agenda for the mission conference in Edinburgh in 1910. The challenge today is actually seeking out the people within different countries, the sort of least reached, unreached, underreached people in countries. So being more intentional in our understanding of the people of nations, so that we can properly seek to target the gospel to them. But I think the other side of this is that, you know, the gospel is not genetically transferable. Okay, so it, you know, as if God had given Liz and I, you know, our own children, you know, our faith would not have been genetically transferable to them. It has to go from one. Each generation needs to grapple with what they believe in terms of the Christian faith. And so what has happened in Europe is that it has not gone from one generation to the next. And so we have a situation in Europe where now we have countries that have become unreached in many ways. And so we need to be thinking, how can we see resources and see churches help there to continue to reach out into some of the needs that exist there in Europe. I think of Australia as well, New Zealand, very secular places. I think of Scotland, where I'm from. I mean, up until the 1950s, the passion and vision for mission in Scotland was tremendous. But since that time, right through to the end of the 20th century into the 21st century, our church has been in decline. Our passion for the gospel, our confidence in the gospel has been lost. We're unsure of it. We need to be convinced of it, that we need, that this is good news for everyone to share. And so I see that maybe missions having to really step into places in Europe, and in fact God is already doing that in different places. One of the fastest growing churches in Europe are African-based churches. African immigrants coming into Europe, starting churches, very vibrant congregations, and having significant influence. I think of one which is a very unique example. It's a very old church in Rotterdam, the city of Rotterdam. It actually is called the Scots Presbyterian Church, okay, in Rotterdam. Now you think, well, why is a church like that in Rotterdam? Well, historically there was a lot of links between Scotland and Holland, and we even have some old Scottish words that are similar to Dutch words. And a Scottish church was planted there way back a few hundred years ago, and it was always there as an English-speaking congregation, has been for the last 2.5 centuries, I think. But that church was really dying. It was really sort of just disintegrating because there was very few people there. But God brought a lot of West African especially, immigrants into Rotterdam. They have come part of that church. They have revived that church in new ways, and it's become very much a multicultural, multi-ethnic church, seeking to reach the city of Rotterdam with the gospel. So there are little sparkles of light in terms of the gospel coming alive again in Europe, but there needs to be a lot more happening. So I think that the challenges also are, the other great challenge for mission for the future is for us, I think, to work in multicultural teams. I think there is nothing greater, no greater testimony in a globalized world than a community of people who are diverse, actually sharing the good news of Jesus. That this message is not something that has got a Western sort of umbrella over it, but it's something that is very diverse in terms of peoples that trust Jesus. And so one of my passions, and certainly for SIM, is that we become more diverse, that we work in multicultural teams, that we learn how to understand each other. It's not easy. All of us are different. We view the world in different ways, and I see it as I move in and out of countries, and as I work even myself with a very multicultural team, I see how my team, they think in very different ways from me. And so some of us can run away from that and think that that's not good. But for me, I need to listen to these other people's voices, because I think they help guide me. They help change my way of thinking and move my way of thinking in new ways. So I think that's another important reality of the gospel being heard through a number of cultural voices. And I think in this globalized world where communication is so instant, people are aware, people have friends on Facebook all over the world, they're communicating with different cultures all over the world. They need to hear the gospel in that way. That needs to come across them in that way. And I think that is a sort of preface of what we read in Revelation about all tribes and peoples and nations coming before the throne of God. It's almost a little bit of heaven on earth in terms of our witness for the gospel. So these are some of the things that I see that are really, I think, yeah, very important for us in what I call in this new age or new era of mission. That certainly is, this is very different. I think the modern missionary movement, which was started in the 1790s when William Carey went to India, actually I think came to an end at the end of the 20th century. That modern mission movement, which was very much a Western driven agenda, a new movement has started. God has commenced a new paradigm of mission in the 21st century, and we're feeling our way, we're learning, we're trying to understand, we're reflecting on it. Thankfully we have a lot of people in the missions community who are doing that, and it's great to contribute towards that debate at this time.